All right, so we're about 1 minute in. Let's get Kaylin. Who do you think is the winner and why? Excellent, very good. So I'm glad that one thing that you mentioned is the main concern for the United States at the Yalta conference is, hey, Germany has surrendered or about to surrender. What we're concerned about is Japan. Japan is the major concern. Japan's still left in the war. We need to make sure that we defeat Japan. And what we end up doing is looking at this bullet right here is Stalin goes ahead and says that they will help the United States defeat Japan. I mean, this is less American lives that we're going to lose with the help of the Soviet Union. Kaylin brought up a good point of geographically. Geographically, you're looking at proximity. I mean, the Soviet Union provided us a lot of support. But there are some wins that the United States is able to get here, as well as Great Britain. So these are things that I would say we're all kind of agreeable. Divide Germany into 4 zones. So the difference between Yalta and Potsdam is going to come later. We get 4 zones, but later it's agreed that Germany's Berlin in Germany, the most populated city, is also going to be separated into 4 zones, right? Not at Yalta, but at Potsdam. At this point right now, Germany will be split up into 4 zones. And the reason for that is just to minimize German power. Punish all the Nazis. That's the second thing. They all agreed with that. This was debatable. Set up a Polish provisional government of national unity, pledged to the holding of free and unfettered elections as soon as possible. They're saying, let the Polish government decide their own, I guess you would say, destination, what they want to do. Give them that popular sovereignty. Let them choose their leaders, all right? Stalin breaks this. Help the freed people of Europe set up the democratic and self-governing countries by helping them to maintain law, order, carry out emergency relief measures, right? Liberating Europe, holding elections, providing democracy, spreading democracy. The United States loves this, as well as Great Britain is good with this. Set up a commission looking at reparations. Soviet Union wants to punish Germany very much for the reparations. Remember, they've already been attacked twice already, right? They're done with that. They want to punish Germany. But of course, Great Britain, the United States, we've learned from that already. So Russia ends up joining the war in the Pacific, or they want to, and they end up, of course, obtaining Manchuria, parts of Manchuria, as well as other territory. Why is it important to understand? And I want you to raise your hand if you know. Why is it important to understand that this would really, that China is concerned about this, that Russia is obtaining parts of Manchuria? Why is that a major concern for China? Any idea? So why would that be a major concern for China? Looking at the global landscape. Okay, communism, yes. What was going on in China before World War II? Before World War II, what was China going through? Yeah, Manchuria is a huge source of resources. Yeah, civil war. China was going through a civil war. And remember, the United States supported the Nationalist Party, Chiang Kai-shek, right? And now what the United States has done is they're giving Manchuria to a communist state, right? So this is detrimental for the Nationalist Party, their support in the Civil War, right? So what ends up happening is Chiang Kai-shek and the Nationalist Party, they lose support, a lot of support in China, because during the Sino-Japanese War, they were waiting for American involvement, and that never came, right? Or it came very slowly. And now, all of a sudden, at Yalta conference, they're getting word of, hey, that they're handing this territory over, right? So let's take a look at this. I want you to explain the message of this political cartoon. Just go ahead and write it in the chat box. Any idea who the baby is, or who might this baby be? I've heard there's a lot of debate on who this might be. I think we have a good idea, though. Any idea who it might be? So it says here, this is actually the author's name. But who might this baby be? So we've got Stalin. Who do you think this is right here? Stars and Stripes, not Obama, but who is this? This is US. Who is this? UK. This would be, who else gets territory of Germany? Henry said it. This would be France. This would be France. Why would France perhaps be portrayed as a baby, you think? Oh, baby France, right? Yeah. So you could say that the cartoonist is kind of perceiving France as just the weakest power of these three, right? Remember, they fell to Germany. But I think you guys said it here. The message of this political cartoon is, who is the obvious winner? Yeah, Kalen said they just recovered from being overrun, but Stalin is. Stalin is going to go ahead, and this is the game of poker, or they're gambling. Excuse me while I reach. What that means is, let me go ahead and take this territory that I've won from you guys in this conference, right? They're taking China. They're taking India, right? Or perhaps they could take India. Remember, India was part of British territory at this time. They've taken Manchuria, and they're saying that perhaps he might even expand his influence even more in China, right? Questions? Where are the cards? Yeah, I don't know. They probably could have put cards, but who knows what game they're playing. But a card game. They're gambling. Gambling's not good. All right. The next question that we have here, or same question, explain the causes of increased political leadership in the United States internationally as a result of World War II. I want you to watch this video and tell me how this could be an example of increased leadership.
I saw an aircraft, like a tiny silver drop, entering the sky above Hiroshima. I instantly recognized it as an American plane, as no Japanese aircraft could fly at that altitude at the time. It was just one plane, so I assumed that it was passing by as usual.
I was content. Chinese fun.
I was wiping the desktop. That was when the bomb was gone.
It took about 45 seconds from the time the bomb left the airplane until it exploded. And I think there wasn't a man in the airplane that wasn't either timing it with his watch or counting or doing something. I was sure the bomb was a dud. I was sure it wasn't going to work.
After falling for 43 seconds, the time and barometric triggers started the firing mechanism. A uranium bullet fired down a barrel into a uranium target. Together, they started a nuclear chain reaction. Solid matter began to come apart, releasing untold quantities of energy.
So what I would like you to do, if you can, just share in the chat box how this is going to influence United States leadership throughout the remaining part of World War, or even just how the creation of the Manhattan Project is going to influence, how would nuclear weapons influence political leadership of the United States. So go for it. Give you a minute. How would nuclear weapons influence the leadership of the United States? Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Very good. So this is definitely going to lead us into an arms race, right? But before we get to the arms race, I'm going to come back to that, is think about the Potsdam Conference, right? It is Harry Truman that is now in power during the Potsdam Conference. And I want you to just share with me, how does this change the relationship and between the Soviet Union and the United States, but also how does this change the provisions of the Yalta Conference? Now that we know about the Manhattan Project and we have this bomb, right? How does this change the provisions of the Yalta Conference? What do you think? So how does this change the provisions of the Yalta Conference? Any idea? Wei Quan, any idea?
I'm guessing it causes the US to be more like, I guess.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this: does the United States during the Yalta and Potsdam conference? So it's actually, let me take a step back. During the Potsdam conference, because Yalta, no one has it, right? But at Potsdam, who has nuclear weapons? Which countries have nuclear weapons in Potsdam? Yeah, only the United States. So if the United States now knows that they have nuclear weapons in Potsdam, which they didn't have in Yalta, how is this going to change our relationship with Russia? Helene said we have more to bargain with. You're right. So what are some things that you think that we might change from Yalta to Potsdam? Okay, could be land. Maybe we don't need to give them as much land. But what else? Why do we need the Soviet Union? Remember in Potsdam, why do we need them? Why are we so giving to the Soviet Union during Yalta? Right on. We needed them to defeat Japan, right? But now we're like, hey, we have this weapon. We don't need them to defeat Japan, right? And there's also a lot of debate on whether or not this weapon should have been used, right? One of the reasons why they wanted to use this weapon was specifically because they felt that it would take months away from the war, that we were confident that we would defeat Japan. But you know what? Save American lives and use nuclear weapons. That was a philosophy that Harry Truman had, right? So Helene said it best. We just did it to take Japan ourselves, because if we needed to use the Soviet Union, that means that they'd want to take more after the war, right? But this is really shifting the political leadership of the United States in Potsdam and Yalta. Just to give you an idea of how powerful these weapons are, because it's scary. It really is scary. Let's take a look at this website. And then we'll end here. Talk about Potsdam next session. So let's see what happens. This is just a quick map that would discuss what would happen if we were to drop a weapon of mass destruction on a certain city. So let's look at Los Angeles. Where do we want to drop it? Glendale? You know, here's what we'll do. We'll drop it right where school is. How about that? That sounds terrible, but where's school? Where am I at? Where do I got to go? We're about right here, right? Is that good enough? That good? There we go. I think that's close enough. So let's pick a few, let's look at a couple things. So let's look at casualties. I want to know how many casualties. Let's look at radioactive fallout. Because remember, when you're dropping nuclear weapons, or there's that radioactivity that's going to lead to a lot of health conditions after. Let's start off with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So we'll look at the Nagasaki bomb. It's a little bit stronger. Any predictions on how many lives are going to be lost? Well, let's see. So when you're looking at Nagasaki, you're looking at estimated fatalities, 68,140. Estimated injuries, you're looking about 170,000 or so, right? However, one thing to consider is look how far the radioactive fallout is, right? The fireball radius. So what this is the radiation radius, sorry, is everything in the green, right? Everything in the orange is fireball. So what this means is relevant to damage on the ground depends on the height of detonation. It touches the ground, the amount of radioactive fallout is slightly increased. Anything inside the fireball is effectively vaporized, right? Yes, the LA River would become radioactive. Let's look at a more recent one, right? Because remember, this is still World War II, not in the Cold War yet. Let's look at the Tsar bomb, right? Any prediction? Give me some numbers. Millions. Up to Highland Park? How far is it going to go? Well, here we go. Let's find out. So, estimated fatalities, close to 5 million. Estimated injuries, another 5 million. I mean, so you're looking at the devastation. I mean, if we're dropped in Los Angeles, look how much of the ocean it's going to hit. But it's going all the way as far as Lancaster and Palmdale, right? So as much, I wish that, and that's with an air burst, yeah. And I think I wish we could have went more in depth looking at this, because when we look at the Cold War, we'd actually look at just how this happens. And after the AP exam, we will look at it, is how these things are developed, how just this nuclear arms race shapes everything. Not everything, but a lot of the things that we do now. Think about physical education. PE classes were developed during this time because we needed to compete with the Soviets, right? Think a lot about the technology that we have, right? Think about satellites, all these things. Questions at all about this? So we will, next session, we'll talk about the Potsdam Conference. And then we'll look at the other effects of World War II, looking at the Korean War, as well as the impact of the Chinese Civil War, right? Did people who dropped the bomb get PSD? Yeah, I mean, you're looking at radiation sickness, as well as probably some cases of post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Any questions for me at all about anything in the course so far? Your cat, my dog, everyone's animals, right? Have the people who dropped the bomb commented? Yeah. So some of those things that we're looking at with the documents or the History Channel, those were some accounts that were reenacted, but they were utilized by some of those primary sources. What if they just didn't drop the bomb? Yeah, one of the things that we're looking at is, remember, in your text, Oppenheimer as well as Einstein, I mean, they were trying to convince that the continuity of developing these weapons would eventually lead to just total destruction, right? So just looking at some of the comments they were talking about, they didn't understand. They weren't sure of the pilots that we're looking at. They weren't necessarily sure of just the total destruction that it would have, right? I mean, when we're looking at this war in general, it's something that's terrible, right? I mean, morally, looking at the aspect of this is there's always that moral dilemma of that they were facing back then of, if this wasn't dropped, the war probably would have gone on for about 3-4 more months. But you're also looking at this, you're getting innocent people that are being killed as a result of this, right? Do I think FDR would have dropped it? That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. You're looking at the difference between FDR and Harry Truman, too, is FDR did have a better relationship with Stalin than Truman did, right? Harry Truman kind of just came in there not knowing what to expect, right? And FDR knew how to deal with Stalin, right? So there's some historical sources that say that these two had a better relationship, that perhaps FDR would have been more likely to work with Stalin, right, in terms of stopping Japan rather than using nuclear weapons. Any other questions? All right, guys. Well, we're going to stop it there for a day. So we'll go about 5 minutes earlier. I'll update you guys on the session for Thursday and just continue. Oh, if you guys can, go ahead and just type here for me so I get an idea of who's here, right? Very good. Excellent. All right, we'll have a good rest of the day, guys. Be safe. And yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions. Get some rest. Stay healthy. Feel better. See you guys. Next assignment that you have due, I believe, is tomorrow, is just chapter 36, GRQ and notes, sorry. And then next class, we'll take our multiple choice test. Maybe we'll do something. I can finally figure out how to use a break rule, right? Thank you, guys.